Minister went on the offensive.
And it was not, Madam Speaker.
They are good traders. They are great traders. And there is George Soros, a man who made $1 billion in a day just by betting against the Bank of England. He didn't rob the bank, he simply broke it.
You were the guy they said who broke the Bank of England.
Right, and
did.
Well, that's true.
How much do you think he made? $1 billion.
Many of the greatest traders got their reputation by being smart, swift, or simply being lucky. Soros got his reputation for being a philosopher with big balls. When he smells inefficiency in a market, it takes a gigantic position. George Soros is a highly controversial man, hated and respected by many. He is rumored to have ruined the economy of various countries for personal profit. He is rumored to have collapsed communism in some regions. But of all the rumors about him, it was verified that he almost bankrupted England.
In the last 2 years, you've been blamed for financial collapse of Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, and Russia.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Are you that powerful?
No, I think there's a great misunderstanding. I am basically there to make money. I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do.
Soros have been involved in currency trading since when he was a teenager in Hungary. He took advantage of the different exchange rates of money changers who changed Hungarian forint to and from other currencies. Many years later, he became a reputable trader, and anytime he comes out of retirement, the trading world wonders which country is getting ruined. To understand how Soros pulled off one of the most popular trades in history, we need to first understand the economical context at the time. The UK was in trouble, inflation was high, unemployment rising. Britain had joined the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, the ERM, a system that forced them to keep the value of the pounds tied to the German Deutschmark. Why? Because it sounded good. Stability, unity, strength. But the truth was uglier. The pound was too weak for the ERM. Britain's economy couldn't keep up. In order to maintain the exchange rate, the government had to keep interest rates absurdly high, hurting businesses, homeowners, and the working class. Every day the pound stayed pegged. Britain bled. Soros saw it, not just the weakness in the pounds, but the weakness in the system. He believed the pounds was overvalued, and worse, that the UK government was bluffing. It was unsustainable. Eventually, they would have to devalue or exit the ERM. Most investors whispered it. Soros shouted it with money. He began shorting the pounds, quietly at first, then loudly. 702 days to Black Wednesday.
Like a rabid opposition.
On October 8, 1990, Britain officially joined the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, ERM, in an aim to gain stability, especially since Britain has been battling high inflation for over a decade. And the pound was pegged at 1 GBP to 2.9 Deutschmarks, with a fluctuation band of plus or minus 6%. This meant the pound could not rise or fall beyond 6% from that rate. And if it did, the Bank of England had to intervene, either by raising interest rates or buying and selling pounds in the currency market to bring it back in line. And as German central bank, the Bundesbank, raised interest rates to curb the inflationary pressures caused by the unification of the East and West Germany, Britain did the same because it was pegged to it. 621 days to Black Wednesday. By 1991, Britain had officially entered the recession. Businesses were folding, one after the other. Unemployment numbers were rising steadily. The country was bleeding economically, but the figures said otherwise, because the government kept interest rates high to defend the currency peg, which further worsened the economy. Businesses were closing their doors because they were unable to cope with the twin pressure of recession and high borrowing costs. Inflation remained stubbornly high, while wages couldn't keep up. 46 days to Black Wednesday. Soros' quantum fund began quietly building a short position against the pound. The market believed the UK wouldn't be able to maintain its ERM obligation due to poor fundamentals. There's a popular trading strategy in technical analysis called divergence. When the chart makes higher highs, but indicators such as RSI, MACD, and Stochard's oscillator, which measures momentum strength, and trend reversal, makes higher lows, it signifies a potential reversal downward. To the public, the price of the pound looked strong because the UK government was doing everything to keep it up. But beneath the calm surface, the economic fundamentals which served as indicators were flashing red. Interest rate was good, but GDP, unemployment, and inflation was bad. And so, George Soros and other spectators began betting against the weakest link in the ERM, the Italian lira and British pound. 14 days to Black Wednesday. The referendum date that France has announced earlier on the Maastricht Treaty was getting nearer, and doubt was casted on Europeans' political and currency integration. Because there was a possibility that France could reject the treaty, the market's confidence in the ERM starts to shake. And that was all the confirmation George Soros and his partner Sterling Miller needed to enter more short positions. 5 days to Black Wednesday. The pressure on Italian lira increased, and Italy responded by spending billions trying to defend its currency. 3 days to Black Wednesday. Italy has just devalued its currency, and that was the first major dominoes to fall. All eyes shifted to Britain, but the UK government insisted it would defend the pound at all costs. Chancellor Norman Lamont said the UK will do whatever it takes to defend the pound. Soros leveraged and increased his short position. But how did he do that? At that time, there was no MetaTrader. He didn't just do it at the click of a button. He did it the traditional way, the old school high-stake Wall Street way. Soros operated through his hedge fund, Quantum Fund, with Sterling Miller as lead strategist. When they decided to short the British pounds, they moved billions not by clicking buttons, but by using institutional level trading desks. Could they have actually made $1 billion? Let's calculate. The borrowing rate at the time was 12% per annum. So if you borrowed £10 billion and held this for, let's say, 2 weeks, you would have paid 0.46%, which would have been equivalent to £46 million in interest. The £10 billion was converted to Dutch mark. At the rate of 2.95 DEM, it would have about 29.5 billion DEM. And if Soros bought back pounds when the price crashed to 2.60 DEM, it meant that he would have gotten 11.35 billion pound. When he returned his 10 billion pounds, he will be left with 1.35 billion pounds. He pays interest for the few days he held the money and some important fee. Now, that is how you break the Bank of England. Black Wednesday, 9 hours to the crash. Currency markets in Asia open, and as soon as the market opened, traders begin selling off the pound. Spectators, including George Soros, begin to aggressively target the currency, anticipating a break from the ERM peg. 8 hours to the crash. The Bank of England begins buying billions of pounds, using its foreign reserve to try and support the ERM exchange rate peg. Despite the intervention, traders continue selling pounds and the pressure increases. 6 hours 30 minutes to the crash. Chancellor of Exchequers, Norman Lamont, announces the Bank of England has increased interest rates from 10% to 12%, hoping to make it more attractive for investors to hold pounds. However, this doesn't move the spectators as the market begins to lose confidence in the pound's ability to remain in the ERM. 5 hours to the crash. The pound is fluctuating widely, dropping lower and lower in value against the Deutsche Mark, DEM. 4 hours to the crash. More short positions are opened. The UK government starts to panic. 150 minutes to the crash. The Bank of England announces a second interest rate hike, this time to 15%, in an attempt to prop up the pound. The massive rate increase has no impact on the market. The move only confirms to the market that the UK is desperate, and traders flood in to short the pounds further. But why did the bank increase interest rates? How does it help them? Well, it encourages people to buy pounds and keep it. Meaning, if you save £1 billion in a year, you would have a profit of £150 million. But nobody cared. 4 p.m. Finally, with the pound at breaking point, the UK government announces it will leave the ERM and allow the pound to flow freely. The pound crashes immediately, falling to around 2.6 DEM and later to as low as 2.40 DEM. After Black Wednesday, government credibility was shattered. For Britain, it was a national embarrassment. Politicians scrambled to spin the story. Some blamed spectators, some blamed Germany. But deep down, they knew they had lost to reality. If Soros was to be blamed, then the Bank of England was more guilty than him. For Soros, it was the trade of a lifetime, but it came with a price. It became a symbol, a villain to some, a genius to others. In the years that followed, conspiracy theories swelled. He was accused of crashing economies, manipulating democracies, even funding revolutions. But none of that changed one fact. On that day, George Soros proved that when a central bank fights the market, bet on the market.
For political pressures. I was